Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. So, I don't know about y'all, but man, all this talk of all this election stuff and whatever else has gotten me pretty well depressed. So, I wanted to talk about a fun type of leadership in the form of the Lord from Tactics Ogre Reborn. Now, when it comes to the Lord, I've already done a Know Your Unit on this guy. It's a fantastic class. It's basically a create your own class kind of situation. And there's a lot of stupid stuff you can do with it. Obviously, you can go hyper optimal and try to go for big numbers or whatever else, but there's very few units that are, for example, able to go and combine together skills from the Swordmaster, from the Berserker, and the Ninja to create somebody that, let's say, sweeps an entire crowd and then attempts to self-destruct to put themselves into safe mode. So, for example, we just go ahead and do one of these now, and guess what? He's just taking a nap. He's just stilled. If he had allies, this would actually help. But I wanted to just talk about stupid things you could do with the Lord, just fun little annoying builds that you could put together to mess with the AI and what have you. Because yeah, these kinds of builds are plenty fun to screw around with. When it comes to Tor, one of the great kind of magical things of the way that they put this remake together is you really don't have to worry about playing optimally, or you don't have to worry about building optimally. You can make a lot of really stupid builds work. So you can, for example, get away with something like this, because in previous versions, like back in SNES or what have you, like the lore was so basic that it basically just was a slight improvement over your basic classes or what have you. Like, sure, it could do double attacks, and that was kind of its main claim to fame. It got a few extra spells, but somehow not the ones that you'd want them to have, like Exorcism. You had the PSP version where they were just dead set on making them the most goody two-shoes Boy Scout you've ever seen, and then in one vision they went a totally different direction with it, having it be the ultimate everyman. But in this case, in Tor's case, it's pretty much the most open that the skill list has ever been, being able to use just about every single skill in the game, and basically just learning all of them as soon as you switch over to that class. And so, for example, something like this, sure, he can be one of the best damage dealers and what have you, but all the same, you can just, let's say, combine all of these multipliers to the point that the numbers just kind of stop giving a crap about reality, and then just self-destruct to put them into safe mode, only for them to come back to life, and then just do it all over again, you know? Like, arguably, we could even swap out Sanguine Assault over here for any of the other autos here, just to, maybe even something like Lament of the Dead might actually be a better option here, seeing as they can essentially rise from the dead and then berserk and sweep once again. It's a very fun thing to screw around with, you know? So I wanted to just make a bunch of these today, just kind of see what kind of dumb crap we can come up with, because optimal builds are boring. You know what? Let's just do some fun stuff. Alright, so next up on the list here is going to be the classic Spearzerker. So this is actually something that's been a bit of a build in the pile here since kind of back in the kind of One Vision PSP days, back before Tor was ever a glimmer in anyone's eye, in which we're essentially going to be combining, once again, Berserker, but we're combining Berserk on top of Mighty Impact and Steel Stance. And essentially what we're doing here is creating a sort of I guess you could say a spear sweeper of sorts. The idea here is that they're constantly going to be countering with poison, using a Steel Stance to retain their ability to counterattack, while still being able to constantly poison stuff all the way, and then going and combining that with a Mighty Strike so that they can combine it with that Berserk whenever they need to in order to pretty much crowd poison a whole circle around them. So, like, we've got our Instill going right here, we've got our Steel Stance, do we get our Berserk? Not quite this time around, but this is still fine. I guess we can just go ahead and, let's say, circle around over here. We can just go ahead and poisonify these two. And even without the critical there, usually the combination of both crit and poison is enough to see things melting away. Now, in this particular case, obviously this is a training map. It's for the purpose of demonstrating things, but this does actually come in pretty darn handy in situations where you want to have him fighting on his own. Steel Stance is not quite as defensive as Phalanx, but just the fact that it doesn't get rid of your counterattack does mean that any kind of debuff weapon can spread debuffs very, very effectively. Whether you want to do this with the Volge or the Scorpion, or even with any of your other debuff weapons from other categories. I personally just really like the Spear because I just like spears. So, it is what it is. And it also means that you can occasionally do really fun-looking swings like this, where you just swing forward, and then miraculously you hit everything else around you anyway. So, either way, fun stuff to screw around with there. And here, let's take a look at the build here in particular. Because beyond just the skills, there actually were other things to this as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick, because when it comes to the spells, this guy was given specifically Paralytic Wave, Nullify Strike, Instill Lightning, and Gift of Renewal. These are all less than 50 in order to use. Gift of Renewal is particularly going to be useful in cases where, like this guy, he's not going to be using much in the way of big expensive spells here. He's going to be wanting to use his Mighty Strike relatively often. He's going to be attacking and counterattacking relatively often, and Gift of Renewal is a nice little way for him to kind of keep himself rolling while still kind of outlasting stuff around him. While First Aid is a very good tool in a lot of situations, Gift of Renewal is simply just going to outperform it in most situations. Additionally, with something like Steel Stance Active, since the AI doesn't always know what to do in that situation, you can, for example, find yourself going and let's say repeatedly throwing out damage even when it's not your attack turn. And that's actually another reason that we went for Mighty Strike instead of a lot of the other abilities here, because it means that when the AI attacks, we can still do our critical sweep without needing to waste our primary action on it. So even if they're going around and spreading eases and stuff like that, we can still use that time to potentially regenerate, to offset poison, or whatever else. So unlike basic healing, regeneration does scale, so it scales exceptionally well, oftentimes making it the best kind of healing that you can have, just due to how long it lasts, due to the fact that you can overheal over your health bar, and yeah, it's relatively cheap by comparison. So there's that as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Next on the pile here is one that I like to call the Frozen Dinner. So there's a lot of different endgame birds that are various varieties of frickin' terrifying. Now, in this case, I'm going to use a basic griffin for the purpose of it's one map into Farampa, and it's very easy to get to. But here's basically what the build's going to look like. So we're going to combine a lot of kind of dumb-seeming things into one build here. So you've seen that there's rooks, that there's phoenixes, whatever your scary bird of the day is, right? And sure, you can send your dragoon, but you want Denim to handle this personally. The last time that they went and ate one of your shamans, it went and affected you on a spiritual level, and now you just got to give them the metaphorical middle finger. So in this case, what we've got is the Garuda bow, so this is going to give us a 15% bonus versus griffins or any other kind of beast, but as an added benefit, it's one-handed. This means in our other hand, we can slap in a wand of fire with our free MP casts over here, and then we're going to pick whatever element they're weak to. So in this case, these basic ones are weak to ice, so we'll both be ice and instill ice at the same time. We don't need to cover weaknesses, this is strictly going full glass cannon mode, but wait a minute, those big scary birds are big and scary and birds, meaning that they're going to get close to you, and you're going to want some defense, right? Well, no. So in this case, we're equipping high luck gear. So we've got 10 luck off the Azure, 15 off the stripper boots, and 15 luck off the stripper chest here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and combine the staff as well as double shot and tremendous shot to have double crits on top of Repel Beast and Lament of the Dead. Yes, this guy is deliberately trying to get close. See, the odds of a card spawning nearby you are pretty decently high, meaning that you can usually assume that you're going to be able to get those skills activated within a couple rounds. We'll see if that happens here, but still, the plan is essentially to allow them to get close, and then use a combination of Repel to make sure that the attack misses, on top of Lament of the Dead to make sure that when they are close by and missing their attacks, they're able to be hit by Fear. And then we essentially combine Fear alongside the 0 chance to hit there, in order to then multiply the ever-loving bejesus out of all of our attacks. So we get the double attack, we get the crit, we get the fear bonus, and then we go from there. So in this case, he's got his repel active, and he's going to go ahead and go over this way. He doesn't have the other thing activated as of yet, but we'll go ahead and turn on our Gift of Renewal, just kind of for the hell of it, because why not? And then on top of that, we'll go ahead and activate our Tremendous Shot so that we have all of this stuff already stacked up. Funnily enough, the one thing that can actually counter this is another Archer, because they'll end up wasting your skills. So, you know, it depends on the map as to whether this will actually be useful for you, but just to kind of throw this out here. But yeah, so Repel Beast means that any one of their attacks will always miss, so if you can make sure that it activates all the time, Great. Anyway, so while we're waiting for that to go ahead and do its thing, because I do want to at least show how he'll get close, we'll go ahead and reset our skills by going and taking care of this wizard over here real quick. We'll go. The ideal situation here is that you also have the snipe boots, so that you could do a little bit more with this. But once you've got the fear, you've got your multiple skills going. You can go ahead and just kind of do one of these, and there you go, a nice little middle finger build against birds. Now, is this going to work every time? No, not necessarily. Are there more effective ways to do this? 100%. But you know what? This is more fun. Moving on. Alright, so next up, a step in the kind of total opposite direction into straight up, yeah, no duh kind of territory, in that we are going to be talking about Infinity. So it's one of the better finishers in the game, but one that often has a tendency to get completely underused on account of the fact that it's really freaking expensive, coming in at 70 MP. So there's a lot of ways to potentially build up your MP beforehand, but unfortunately a lot of them cost money. So what's a cheap bastard to do that wants to primarily focus on auto skills? So in this particular case, what we're going to be doing is combining in the Shaitan's Belova on top of Meditate, as well as Lament of the Dead. See, one of the best things about a good solid finisher is its ability to one-shot something through a full health bar. Now, one of the issues that can come up with this is if you're just starting out the fight and you're just barely shy of being able to achieve that one shot because you're missing about 200 or 300 health. So the counter on the axe already makes a pretty good solid case of that. On top of that, it can be a little bit risky to go in to activate a finisher right from the get-go, so let's say instead we end up deciding to go turn on Phalanx so that we're no longer risking anything. On top of that, we can simply go and use our Drain MP from the very start in order to try and make it so that as soon as our Meditate rolls, even if we don't activate any fights, we do still already have access to our Infinity more than likely. On top of that, when we, let's say, have issues with, say, finding any physical offense buffs along the way, those problems are a lot easier to deal with if, for example, you have something like Fear out in the field there. So you can basically safely chip away at something with your insanely powerful finishers, and then go and use Lament of the Dead as as a further ability to protect yourself, seeing as we see right here, these guys are doing next to no damage in their frightened state. On top of this, if you were to, for example, keep on attacking this way, this does mean that you have a little bit of extra vertical forgiveness and what have you. Doesn't really help with stun, unfortunately, though we can technically throw in a Mother's Mercy to help assist with this. But this allows you to scale up exceptionally well without necessarily needing to have all of your ideal cards set up or anything along those lines. So something like this is actually really useful for a solo run. I never actually have made any videos on solo runs yet, but yeah, Lament of the Dead is one of the most useful things for solo runs. It's just that the Terranite itself isn't particularly great at solo runs. So instead, what we have is the Lord using one of the best parts of a Terranite for the purpose of boosting this axe finisher here. Now, yes, technically a lot of this stuff is stuff that the Terranite is able to do on a normal day, but again, combining in with something like Phalanx as well as an Instill, we can see some pretty solid improvements on this overall situation here. Additionally, due to the kind of insane scaling that ends up happening, you can oftentimes get one-shots on things a lot easier this way. So, you know, that's just kind of fun to play around with. Now, granted, you can do this with basically any element or any finisher that you prefer. Probably the fastest being something like a two-hander or even a dagger. Like Lament of the Dead plus dagger is insanely good. Heart Crusher in particular. Yeah, anyways, that's kind of about that. Alright, but let's say you're more of a knife fighty sort. You want to see your denim just going around kind of speed knifing stuff and what have you. So we have a fairly competent knife fighter setup over here, essentially using sort of a more dagger-orientated version of what the Swordmaster would typically do, in order to create a sort of a speed stabber, as it were. So we've got a combination of First Aid as well as Gift of Renewal. We've got Preempt along with Vigorous Attack and Berserk. So once again, we're leaning very heavily on the autos because, you know, having a full auto skill bar is pretty damn good for the Lord. It's one of those things that really makes this dude tick. Now, on top of having parry, we still also have a counterattack, courtesy of putting a bow in our offhand, because seeing as this guy's defenses are already pretty solid, he's going to be attacked most of the time, and he's going to be regenerating most of the time. We don't have to put as big of an emphasis on going and attempting to let's say, get all of our kind kind of solid direct defenses up, as it were. So we're going to go ahead and turn on Gift of Renewal here, and we're essentially just going to attempt to outlast the entire map. See, he's going and using his preempt on top of his counters in order to generate MP, in order to then fund his preempt, in order to fund his adventure going and collecting cards, in order to fund his adventure of stabbing and poisoning everything on the map. Again, it depends on how you prefer to do things. To me, this is absolutely freaking hilarious. So we're going to go ahead and regenerate off all of this damage here. We're going to get our Berserk activated, and we're going to go ahead and pick up this auto skill card. So all of his skills are now guaranteed. We're going to re-up his BOS here, courtesy of our Luminant Gauntlets. You can go for Speed Star here, though personally I think the guarantee off of the Luminant Gauntlets on top of them being a relatively common-ish enough drop in the late game, that I kind of like using those for this instead. But now the cool thing about this is that you're basically now going, spreading guaranteed poison, you're getting multiple attacks per round, you're getting near infinite MP kind of indirectly here. All of these things are pretty much guaranteed right from the get-go, and you can just sort of dance around everything like this. Once again, they'll just sort of keep re-upping that poison, keep bleeding away, and oftentimes they'll waste their turns attempting to go in to heal off the poison, heal off any kind of damage that came their way. This is especially useful as you get on in the game towards the Coda chapters, where they happen to carry an absolute kind of preposterous load of different types of healing items on them. So yeah, mostly they're going to be dedicating to stuff like throwing out basic missile spells, which you can simply heal off with your double stack regeneration here. And so yeah, you can re-up your Gift of Renewal as often as you need to. You can continue on with your standard regeneration as much as you need to. This is a build that, functionally speaking, can just outlast just about anything in what I consider to be a really darn fun way. Alright, so that's kind of about that. Also, if you have enough MP left over, you can always do something like this and just go full summon spam on stuff as well, if you wanted to work that in there, considering that a large amount of MP is a huge part of what makes a build like this work. Their constant trickle of MP from the different types of counters that they get gives them a ton of benefits. On top of that, they actually can counter ranged attacks as well, which is kind of neither here nor there, but just kind of interesting. I also forgot to mention earlier, during that, the monster hunting kind of guy, the fried chicken build there, they actually, interestingly enough, one of the side benefits of using the wind bow for that kind of stuff is that they actually don't counter as often. The weird range on that bow means that the AI will oftentimes completely dance out of it, so the counter being on that bow is potentially either a good or bad thing, depending on the situation, but in their particular case, they can pretty much guarantee that you don't have to worry about countering if you don't want to, at least from the ranged side of things. So if you prefer to have, let's say, a one-handed weapon getting a counter-attack, but you didn't want to be counter-attacking from range, it does seem to be a weird quirk of that weapon. So, anyways, just kind of throwing that out there. Alright, anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next one then. Next up on this list of all things is going to be a old-school RuneScape flinching build, because I felt like it. So basically the idea is that this guy's equipment just happens to look like a free-to-play player on OSRS, with the idea being that they're using a combination of Vigorous Attack along with Preempt, just like last time, in order to guarantee a stun before somebody attacks, meaning that there's actually a chance to stun them out of their attack. This doesn't work all the time, but like you saw right there, it can prevent somebody from hitting you in the first place, which is just a fun little thing to do. And granted, this is actually something that, again, the Swordmaster can just do by default, but in this case, they can do it way cooler because they can do it with something that looks like a rune two-hander. Additionally, we're going to be going for a health steal to look like the blood spells. We're going to be putting in a negate spell and negate physical that happens to look just like the overhead prayers. And on top of that, we're going to travel everywhere through teleportation, because of course we will, and throw in a missile spell on there because, you know, this guy is relatively poor. I'm going to assume that Aqua Blast is just the best that they can do here. So, yeah, just not exactly the most optimized thing by any means whatsoever, but it's just a fun little goofball thing to play around with. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next. Okay, well, shoot, I was planning to do another one, but apparently my battery is saying no, so yeah, probably should have charged this thing this morning. Anyway, I'm just going to wrap it up there for now. Hope this was amusing, and yeah, y'all have yourselves a good one. I will see you in the next one. If you guys want to see another one of these, I mean, I could do this crap all day. Anyway, see you then. Take care. Bye.